I want you to go look at your credit card statement right now. Seriously, pull it up. Count the number of software subscriptions you're paying for. I'll wait. If the number's higher than 5 and you're running a 1 or 2 person firm, we need to talk. Hey friends, welcome to the Thrive Advisor podcast, where we help tax advisory firm owners build practices that are sustainable and profitable. I'm your host, Aaron Skool. Today we're talking about something that costs small firm owners thousands of dollars a year and creates more chaos than it solves: your tech stack. Specifically, why it's probably too complicated, why that's hurting you more than you realize, and how to think about technology in a way that actually supports the practice you're trying to build. If you've ever signed up for a tool because someone in a Facebook group said it changed their life, or because a vendor gave a slick demo at a conference, and then 3 months later, you're still not using half the features and you can't figure out how to cancel, this episode is for you. Let's get into it. When I started my practice, I spent tens of thousands of dollars on software. I'm not exaggerating. I was buying everything that promised to solve my problems: practice management, project tracking, proposal tools, scheduling tools, client portals, e-signature platforms, document management. Every time I felt overwhelmed, I thought the answer was another tool. And you know what happened? I spent more time learning software than serving clients. I had tools that overlapped, tools that didn't talk to each other, and tools I was paying for monthly that I hadn't logged into in weeks. My tech stack wasn't a system, it was a graveyard of good intentions. Here's what I've learned since then. Technology should solve a problem you already have, not a problem you might have someday. Every tool you add introduces complexity. It needs to be learned, maintained, integrated, and eventually migrated when something better comes along. If you're adding tools before you've maxed out what you already have, you're not building a system. You're just collecting software. The worst part is that new advisors are especially vulnerable to this. You're already feeling behind. You see established firms with these elaborate tech stacks and you think you need all of that just to get started. You don't. You need almost none of it. Let me walk through what you actually need at each stage of building your practice, because the answer changes as you grow. And the mistake most people make is buying for the stage they want to be at instead of the stage they're actually in. So when you're starting out, your tech stack should cost you somewhere around $30 to $50 a month. That's it. I know that sounds impossibly low, but hear me out. Start with Google Workspace. For one monthly fee, you get email with your custom domain, Google Docs, Sheets, Drive, Meet for video calls, and a calendar with scheduling built in. That single subscription handles your email, your document creation, your file storage, your video meetings, and your scheduling. 5 tools in one, and your clients already know how to use all of them. Now, could you use Microsoft 365 instead? Absolutely. The point isn't Google versus Microsoft. The point is picking one ecosystem and using it fully before you start bolting things on. Most advisors are paying for 3 or 4 tools that duplicate what their core productivity suite already does. For tax software, if you're just getting started, take a look at Drake. It's affordable, it's solid, and it'll handle the returns you're doing when you're building your client base. As your returns get more complex and your practice matures, you can move up to something like UltraTax CS, but you don't need to start there. Don't buy the Ferrari when you're still learning to drive. The returns you're doing in year 1 and year 2 are not going to be the same complexity as what you're doing in year 5. Match the tool to where you are, not where you hope to be. For bookkeeping, QuickBooks is still the standard for better or for worse. Your clients are likely already on it, and fighting that reality creates more friction than it's worth. Get comfortable with it, learn it deeply for your niche, and standardize your chart of accounts so every client looks the same when you open their books. I can't stress that last point enough. When every client's books are structured the same way, your review process becomes repeatable. You know exactly where to look, you know what normal looks like, and when something is off, it jumps out at you instead of hiding in a custom chart of accounts that's different for every client. And here's the part that surprises people. You can manage your entire client workflow on a Google Sheet when you're getting started. A simple spreadsheet with client names, status, deadlines, and next actions. It's not glamorous. It won't impress anyone at a conference. But it works, it's free, and it forces you to think through your process before you automate it. I've seen advisors with 5 clients paying $100 a month for practice management software. That's $1,200 a year to manage 5 people. You could do that with a sticky note on your monitor, let alone a spreadsheet. This is the key insight that I wish someone had told me. You can't automate a process you don't understand. When you jump straight to practice management software before you've manually worked through your client lifecycle a few dozen times, you're encoding confusion. You're automating a process that hasn't been refined yet. And then when things break, you don't know if it's the tool or the process, and everything gets harder to fix. So start with a spreadsheet. Run your first 10, 15, 20 clients through it manually. You'll start to see the patterns. You'll notice where things get stuck, where you keep forgetting steps, where the bottlenecks are. That's the information you need before you go shopping for practice management. So, when do you actually need practice management software? In my experience, it's when two things are true at the same time. So you have enough clients that tracking them manually creates real risk of something falling through the cracks, and you've done the manual work long enough to know what your process actually is. For most solo practitioners, that's somewhere around 12 to 15 clients. Before that, the spreadsheet works. After that, the spreadsheet starts to feel dangerous. You're scrolling, you're searching, you're second guessing whether you updated the status on that return. That's the signal. Now, when you do make the move, you've got a decision to make. And I want to be honest about my perspective here. There are broadly two philosophies in practice management. There are all-in-one platforms that try to do everything: client portal, e-signatures, invoicing, workflow, document management, communication, all under one roof. And then there are platforms that focus on workflow and project management, but let you integrate best-in-class tools for everything else. I use Carbon, and the reason I chose it is because it follows the second philosophy. It's really good at workflow, task management, and automations. And then it connects to everything else I need. It talks to my phone system, my email, tax transcript services. Between its native integrations and Zapier, I can automate just about anything. The pieces all do what they do best, and Carbon is the connective tissue. The alternative is something like Taxstone, which tries to be the all-in-one solution. A lot of advisors like it, and I understand the appeal. One login, one bill, everything in one place. But my experience has been that when a platform tries to do everything, it tends to do nothing exceptionally well. You end up with a portal that's okay, invoicing that's okay, workflow that's okay, but nothing that's great. And you're locked into their version of everything with limited ability to swap out pieces that aren't working. That said, this is a personal preference, not a universal truth. The right answer depends on how you think about your practice, what your integration needs are, and honestly, how much you enjoy tinkering with connections between tools. Some people want the simplicity of one platform. Others want the flexibility of best-in-class components. Neither's wrong. What is wrong is buying either one before you need it. If you have got a handful of clients in a Google Sheet that's working, you don't need practice management yet. Save the money, invest it in your niche knowledge or your marketing, buy it when the spreadsheet breaks, not before. Once your practice management is humming, that's where you start looking at the specialized tools. And this is where it gets fun, but it's also where people tend to go overboard. For me, the next layer was automation. I've talked in earlier episodes about connecting status changes to client communications, auto-generating tasks from workflow triggers, and building systems where things happen without me touching them. Most of that runs through Zapier connecting Carbon to other tools in my stack. For month-end close specifically, I use a tool called Double that streamlines the review process. And here's the thing I like about Double. You don't need to wait until you have a big book of business. You can start with a single client. It's about $10 a month with no flat monthly commitment, so you pay as you go. If you're doing any bookkeeping at all, it's worth looking at early because it saves real time on the review process, and the cost is low enough that it pays for itself almost immediately. For secure file exchange, if you're not ready for a full client portal, take a look at something like Encairo. It's about $10 a month and gives you a simple way to exchange documents securely with clients. It's not practice management. It's not a portal with all the bells and whistles. It just solves the specific problem of getting sensitive files back and forth safely. That's the kind of targeted tool that makes sense even early on. For call recording, which I've talked about in earlier episodes, something like Fireflies plugs into your Google Meet calls and gives you transcripts, action items, and searchable notes. There are newer options like Ping Assistant that are getting more capable, though they come at a higher price point. Either way, having a call recorder is a game changer for the documentation discipline we've talked about before. Instead of trying to remember what you discussed with the client, you have the transcript. Instead of writing meeting notes from scratch, you have the AI pull your key points. But notice the pattern here. Every tool I've added solved a specific painful problem that I was already experiencing. I didn't buy Double because someone told me it was cool. I bought it because month-end close was eating too much of my time and I needed a better process. I didn't set up Zapier automations because automation is trendy. I set them up because I was sending the same emails over and over, and it was driving me crazy. That's the filter. Before you buy anything, ask yourself, what problem am I solving? And am I actually experiencing that problem right now? If the answer is, well, I might need it when I grow, put your credit card away. Buy it when you need it, not when you might need it. I'll give you one more example. I've talked to advisors who bought proposal software before they had a consistent pricing model. Tools like Ignition start at $100 a month, and their pro plan with integrations runs a couple $100 a month. They're spending $1,200 to $2,400 a year on a tool to generate beautiful proposals, but every proposal is different because they haven't standardized their tiers yet. That's not a software problem, that's a pricing problem. Fix the pricing first, like we talked about in an earlier episode, and suddenly you don't need proposal software at all. You need a Google Doc template with your 3 tiers and a signature line. Maybe you upgrade to something fancier later, but not until your foundation is solid. The same logic applies to client portals. A lot of advisors rush to set up a client portal because it feels professional. But if you've got 10 clients and you're emailing them documents anyway, the portal is just one more place for things to get lost. Your clients are already in their email all day. Meet them where they are. Add the portal when the volume of document exchange makes email genuinely unmanageable, not because it looks impressive on your website. I want to zoom out for a second and talk about how to think about your tech stack as a whole, because I think this is where a lot of advisors get lost. Your tech stack is not a collection of tools. It's a system. And a system only works when the pieces talk to each other. The biggest waste I see in small firms isn't paying for too many tools, although that's common. It's paying for tools that don't connect, which means you're manually moving information between platforms. You enter a client's email in your practice management system, then again in your invoicing tool, then again in your tax software. You update a status in one place, but it doesn't reflect anywhere else. So you're checking 3 dashboards to figure out where things stand. That's not a tech stack. That's a collection of data islands. When I evaluate a new tool, the first question I ask is, does it integrate with what I already have? So if it doesn't connect to Carbon or work with Zapier, it's probably a no for me, no matter how good the demo looks. Because a great tool that lives in isolation just creates more manual work, which is the opposite of what technology is supposed to do. The second question is, does this replace something I'm already doing manually in a tool I already have? If I can accomplish the same thing with a Google Sheet formula or a Carbon automation, I don't need another subscription. I need to learn my existing tools better. And the third question is, who else needs to use this? If it's just me, the bar is lower. If a team member or a client needs to interact with it, it needs to be simple enough that I'm not spending hours training people on yet another platform. Let me leave you with this thought, because I think it's the most important thing we'll talk about today. Every tool you add to your stack has hidden costs beyond the monthly subscription. That's the learning curve. There's the maintenance and updates. There's the cognitive load of remembering which tool does what. There's the risk that the tool changing its pricing or its features or shuts down entirely, and now you're migrating data under pressure. When you're a 1 to 4 person firm, every hour you spend managing your tech stack is an hour you're not spending on clients. And unlike a big firm with an IT department, you are the IT department. Every integration that breaks, every update that changes a workflow, every password reset, that's your time. Simplicity isn't just a nice idea. It's a competitive advantage. The advisor running lean on 5 well-integrated tools is going to outperform the advisor drowning in 15 tools they barely understand. Because the first advisor has mental space for what actually matters, thinking about their clients, being proactive, and doing the advisory work we talked about in the last episode. I'll be honest with you, I learned this the hard way. When I look back at my first year in practice, I spent at least $25,000 on software. I'm not proud of that number. $12,000 of it went to a tax advisory suite that promised the world in terms of being able to sell tax plans to clients. It was absolute garbage. The plans it generated were generic, the interface was clunky, and I could have done better work with a Google Doc and my own brain. That's $12,000 I lit on fire because the demo looked impressive and I was insecure about not having enough tools. And the rest of that spend was spread across a dozen other subscriptions, most of which didn't talk to each other. That was the real killer. I had client information in 5 different systems. None of them synced. So I'd update an email address in one place and forget to change it in 3 others. Every 3 to 6 months, I'd have to do a cleanup project where I'd go through every platform and figure out which version of a client's information was actually correct. It was miserable. And it wasn't just an inconvenience. When things can't talk to each other, you lose trust in your own data. You're never quite sure if the status you're looking at is current. You hesitate before sending something to a client because maybe the address is wrong. That uncertainty compounds over time and it makes it feel shakier than it should. If I could go back, I'd tell myself the same thing I'm telling you. Start with the bare minimum and only add when the pain of not having something is real and specific. Not theoretical, not what if, real pain that you're experiencing this week. Your tech stack should feel like a tailwind, not a headwind. If you spend more time managing your tools than serving your clients, something is broken, and the answer is almost never adding another tool. Here's your Thrive takeaway for this episode. Start simple. Google Workspace, Drake, QuickBooks. Manage your clients on a spreadsheet until the spreadsheet breaks. When it does break, invest in practice management that integrates with best-in-class tools rather than trying to do everything in one platform. Before you buy anything, run it through the 3 questions. What problem does this solve? Am I experiencing that problem right now? And does it connect to what I already have? Here's what I want you to do this week. Pull up your credit card statement and list every software subscription you're paying for. Next to each one, write down whether you actively used it in the last 30 days. If you haven't touched it in a month, cancel it. You can always resubscribe later if you actually miss it. I bet most of you won't. Then look at what's left and ask yourself, are these tools talking to each other, or am I manually moving information between them? If you're doing manual data transfer between platforms, that's your next problem to solve, either through integration or by consolidating tools. Technology should make your practice simpler, not more complicated. Build the stack that fits the practice you have today and add to it only when you feel the pain of not having the next piece. If you're trying to figure out what your stack should look like for your specific niche and client count, that's exactly the kind of thing we work through together in the Thrive Advisor Collective. Advisors helping advisors build smarter practices. The link is in the show notes. That's it for today, friends. If this episode saved you from buying something you don't need yet, share it with another advisor who's drowning in software subscriptions and needs permission to simplify. You've been listening to the Thrive Advisor podcast. Work smarter, serve better, thrive always. We'll see you next time.